What if I told you that the smartest man in all of literature did not fail because he was not clever enough? He failed because he could not stop being clever. That sounds backward. But stay with me because nearly 3,000 years ago, Homer told the story of a genius named Odysseus. And buried inside that ancient epic are 5 psychological traps that still sabotage brilliant people today. By the end of this video, you are going to see your own overthinking in a completely different light. Because the Odyssey is not just a story about a man trying to get home from war. It is a blueprint for how smart people get in their own way. Odysseus is described as the cleverest man alive. He designed the Trojan horse, the strategy that won an entire war. He could outthink kings, soldiers, and monsters. And yet it takes him 10 years to complete a journey that should have taken weeks. 10 years. 10 years of delays, disasters, lost companions, and near destruction. Not because he lacked intelligence, because his intelligence kept turning against him. And the first trap appears the moment he wins. After leaving Troy, Odysseus and his men land on the island of the Cyclops Polyphemus. They get trapped inside the monster's cave. Odysseus comes up with a brilliant plan. He gets the Cyclops drunk, blinds him, and tells him his name is Nobody, so that when Polyphemus screams for help, he shouts that nobody is attacking him. The other Cyclops hear this and do nothing. It is genius. Odysseus has won. He and his men escape. They are already sailing away to safety, and then he ruins it. He stands on the ship and shouts back his real name. He needs the Cyclops to know who outsmarted him. That single act of ego allows Polyphemus to pray to Poseidon, who then curses Odysseus to wander for a decade. Think about that. The smartest man in the Greek world had already won, and he still turned victory into suffering because he needed recognition. That is the first trap of intelligence. The need to be seen as smart becomes stronger than the desire to succeed. You see this everywhere. Someone corrects their boss in public over a minor detail and quietly damages their own future. Someone kills a deal because they cannot stop proving how much they know. Someone wins the argument and loses the room. Psychologists call this impression management, the constant labor of controlling how others see us. And the research behind it is almost cruel in its irony. The more aggressively someone broadcasts their own cleverness, the less credit they actually get. We trust quiet competence far more than loud intelligence. Studies on group performance find that the person most focused on being seen as the smartest one in the room reliably lowers the group's output, because collaboration dies the moment someone starts optimizing for applause instead of results. But that is only the first trap. The second one is quieter, and for a lot of smart people even more dangerous. The island of the Lotus Eaters. Odysseus sends scouts ashore. They encounter people eating a strange flower that makes them forget everything. Their mission, their home, their purpose. They no longer want to leave. They just want to stay and consume more. Odysseus has to drag his own men back to the ship by force. This is one of the oldest descriptions of a modern problem, stimulation replacing action. Smart people are especially vulnerable to it because their minds can find pleasure almost anywhere. Another book, another course, another theory, another rabbit hole. And because learning feels productive, they mistake consumption for progress. This is why so many intelligent people stay stuck for years. They are not lazy. They are overfed. They have eaten the lotus. There is a name for this in the research: the information action fallacy. Consuming information triggers almost the same dopamine reward as taking action, without any of the risk. Your brain genuinely struggles to tell the difference between learning something and doing something. So the smart person gets the neurochemical payoff of progress while making none of it. Then comes the third trap. And this one does not look like a trap at all. It looks like rest. It looks like comfort. It looks like you have finally earned a break. Circe, the enchantress, turns Odysseus's men into pigs. Odysseus resists her magic, confronts her, and wins. But then something strange happens. He stays on her island for an entire year. Not because he is trapped. Not because he cannot leave. Because he is comfortable. Circe offers luxury, pleasure, companionship, and zero urgency. For 1 full year, the man desperate to get home simply stops trying. This is the comfort trap, and it destroys intelligent people all the time. Smart people are usually capable enough to build a reasonably comfortable life. They earn enough, adapt enough, stabilize enough. And once comfort arrives, ambition quietly goes to sleep. There is a name for the mechanism underneath this: the hedonic treadmill. It is the same finding behind the famous study on lottery winners. A year after the win, they report being no happier than people who never won at all. We adapt fast. Whatever we have becomes the new normal, and once it becomes normal, it stops pulling us forward. Smart people just reach that plateau faster because they are better at getting comfortable. They did not lose their ambition. Their brains simply reclassified enough as finished. A year passes, then 5, then 15, and one day they look around and realize they traded their potential for predictability. Now, I want to pause here because this is the exact point in the story, and usually the exact point in a video like this, where people quietly check out. The traps stop feeling new. It starts to feel like a list. So look at what these 3 traps actually have in common, because it is not the monsters. The Cyclops let Odysseus avoid humility. The Lotus Eaters let his men avoid effort. Circe let him avoid challenge. Every trap so far has been intelligence spent avoiding something uncomfortable. And the 4th trap comes for the thing smart people worship most: the belief that they just need a little more information before they act. The sirens. Everyone knows this scene. Beautiful voices call from the rocks, luring sailors to their death. Odysseus has himself tied to the mast so he can hear the song without jumping overboard. But what did the sirens actually offer him? Knowledge. Not romance, not pleasure, knowledge. They promised to tell him everything that happened at Troy and everything happening in the world. They offered him omniscience. For an intellectual, that is the one temptation he cannot resist by willpower alone. It has to be the ropes. This is the trap of infinite information. Smart people want certainty before they act. They want to understand all the variables before they commit. And in the modern world, this trap has never been more lethal because you can genuinely spend your entire life consuming information. The internet is an ocean of sirens. Every article, every notification, every podcast sings the same song. Just learn a little more first. Meanwhile, the rocks are getting closer, and you have not moved an inch toward where you actually meant to go. Barry Schwartz named part of this the paradox of choice. The finding that more options should make us more certain, but instead produce more doubt. Researchers also identified something called decision fatigue. Every option you evaluate drains the same limited resource you need to actually commit. So the person who insists on knowing everything before moving is not being thorough. They are spending the exact currency they need to act. And that leads to the 5th trap, the one that finally exposes the whole game. Odysseus must sail between Scylla and Charybdis. On one side, a 6-headed monster. On the other, a whirlpool that can swallow the entire ship. He cannot avoid both. He has to choose. Circe warns him to sail closer to Scylla. He will lose 6 men, but Charybdis would take everyone. For the first time in the story, there is no clever escape, no workaround, no option where nothing is lost. Only a choice between 2 losses. And smart people are catastrophically bad at this because intelligence creates the illusion that a 3rd option always exists somewhere if you just think hard enough. So they wait. They stay in the job that is killing them because they have not found the perfect exit. They stay in the relationship that is draining them because they are still calculating whether something better might exist. They analyze both monsters so thoroughly that the current drags them straight into the whirlpool. Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize partly for explaining why. It is called loss aversion. Losses hurt roughly twice as much as an equivalent gain feels good. That asymmetry is exactly what freezes people between Scylla and Charybdis. A guaranteed small loss is certain to hurt right now. The catastrophic loss is still hypothetical, still avoidable in theory. So the mind keeps reaching for the version of events where nothing has to be given up. The intelligent mind, which should be best at weighing probabilities, is often the worst at it the moment a real loss is on the table. Now here is where the Odyssey stops being a list of warnings and becomes something else. Because Odysseus actually changes. After 10 years of ego, distraction, comfort, and indecision, he finally makes it home to Ithaca. But his palace is overrun with suitors trying to marry his wife and claim his kingdom. And here, the cleverest man alive does something he could never have done at the start of the story. He becomes invisible. He disguises himself as a beggar. He sits in his own house while people insult him. He lets arrogant men mock him to his face. He watches. He waits. He says nothing. This is the same man who once shouted his real name across open water because he could not stand to go unrecognized. Now he can sit through open disrespect without a word because he has finally learned something his intelligence alone could never teach him. Restraint. Intelligence is not the highest form of power. Governed intelligence is. Odysseus does not become less brilliant in that final act. He becomes less ruled by his own brilliance. Raw cleverness without discipline is a weapon pointed at yourself. It can win the war and still cost you the decade after it. And that is the real reason smart people fail. Not because they lack ability, but because they lack mastery over it. The person who has to correct everyone is not wise. The person who never stops researching is not wise. The person who mistakes comfort for a rival is not wise. The person who refuses to accept any loss ever is not wise. They are all just clever. And clever without wise is Odysseus on the deck of his own ship, screaming his name into the wind, trading a clean victory for a decade of wandering. So if you recognize yourself in any of this, and honestly, most sharp, self-aware people should, the shift is not toward less intelligence. It is toward less avoidance. Measure your progress by what you have actually done, not by what you understand. Notice when learning has quietly become hiding. Notice when comfort has become the finish line you never meant to cross. Notice when your need to be right is costing you the chance to be effective. Notice when you are still waiting for a perfect option that was never going to appear. And build an Ithaca, a destination that matters more to you than being recognized, being comfortable, or being certain. 3,000 years ago, Homer encoded a psychological masterclass inside an adventure story. Every monster in the Odyssey is a mirror, and every trap reveals a different way intelligence turns against itself. The hero's journey was never really about getting home. It was about becoming the kind of person who deserves to arrive. Find your Ithaca, and the monsters become manageable. Ignore it, and you can wander for a very long time, brilliantly, the entire way. If you got value from this video, like it and subscribe to our channel.